We're just waiting for the link to come, and then I will put it on our, excuse me, our Racine, yeah, I can talk today. Racine County I Facebook page,
Okay.
and then we will get this together. So, all right. Oh, okay. You just heard me talking to myself, basically. All right, hang on one second. I'm just going to post this here on our Facebook page. It's going to generate a thingy. Doohickey. All right, we are good to go. All right. Everyone, thank you for joining us. I don't know if it's good morning, good afternoon, or good evening when you see this, but my name is Heather Asianbi with the Racine County Eye. I am a co-founder of the site, and I am currently serving as its managing editor. And this is Coffee with Candidates. And why did we call it that? Because we were doing them in person with actual coffee. However, I caught a bug this week, and I don't want to spread cooties to everybody, so we moved it to Zoom. Um, and today we have with us attorney Jamie McClendon. She is running for the Racine County Circuit Court in Branch 7. Branch
Mhm.
7. So Jamie, please take a moment and introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself.
Well, good morning or good afternoon. I have moved on to Diet Coke, so it is the afternoon for me. My name is Jamie McClendon. I am an attorney here in Racine County. I've been practicing here since 2011. I do mostly criminal defense, but I also do some family and juvenile matters. I think, found my passion in representing kids both in juvenile and adult court. And I think that it is something that I really do strive for is to try to keep kids out of our justice system and keep them in schools. And I'm hoping I can continue that as a judge here in Racine County.
Excellent. All right, so we're going to jump into questions. Um, what can you share about your legal background and let me just explain to you and to everybody else. Okay, so my camera is here, Jamie is here, my questions are over here. So I have to keep turning, but I'm not ignoring Jamie or turning away from the audience. Okay, just wanted that out of the way. So what can you share about your legal background and experiences to have that are preparing you for the role of circuit court judge?
Well, I have, for the most of my career, worked in some kind of form with a public defender's office. So I started as an intern, went to a law clerk, and then eventually became an attorney for the office. And so I am actually really used to having a high caseload and having a lot of work on the calendar and just the high speed rate that everything kind of transpires into the court system. I don't know what I would do with a smaller calendar. I'm just used to always going, going, going. So I think that that is something that I can bring to the bench is that I am not afraid of hard work or a lot of work. I actually think I thrive in that. But beyond that, the experiences and things that I have with cases is that I have always taken on the most difficult cases with the most difficult issues, whether it be the legal issues or maybe a client with severe mental illness or some kind of substance abuse issue. I don't shy away from doing the hard work and the hard cases. So I think that that is something that I look forward to bringing on the bench.
Excellent. All right. How would you describe your judicial philosophy and how does it influence your decision-making process if you are elected to the bench?
So with everything that's going on in the world, we can't ignore what's going on outside the courthouse. But as a judge, I do think that where I fall is more on the letter of the law. I know everyone has, and when they come into the courtroom, that's someone's life. That's some kind of emotional impact that it's had on either the people in the courtroom or even in the community. But as a judge, I really do want to be able to focus on the law and apply the facts and circumstances of a case to the law. So I can't allow public pressure or the kind of fad of the day impact where I would like, where I see a case going. I really do have to focus on what's in front of me and the impact of that case right in front of me. So I don't think I'm going to be an activist judge. I do think it's going to be more towards the letter of the law.
Okay. So in what ways have you engaged or do you engage with the Racine County community, and how does this involvement inform your perspective as a potential judge?
Well, I am out in the community all the time. I feel like I am probably more there than I am in my own home. I was very fortunate. I became the president of the hospitality center last year, so I really have put in a lot of my energy and my focus onto that. I volunteer in the community all the time. So they needed volunteers to help clean up the area around Memorial Hall. I volunteered for that. I recently volunteered for the event at Festival Hall.
Empty
The empty
bowls, you
bowls.
mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
empty bowls. And actually coming up, I am volunteering for Take a Taste Out of Crime. So I just try to see where there's a need, and I love interacting and talking to people. I think that makes me uniquely qualified for this job, that I'm not hiding in my house. I am out there and I want to engage, and I don't think I can be missed in a crowd. So
I mean,
I
you are a little
appreciate
tall. I'm just,
I'm
you're
tall with this
tall.
big hair and makes me smile. So I appreciate people coming up and talking to me. I have had people run into me when I was at a Walmart saying, "I know you from court," and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, just let me buy my things." But I do appreciate that people come up to me and tell me about the court system, for better or for worse. But people are not afraid to tell me.
Why did you want this job?
Um, so after practicing, now since 2011 here in Racine, I just see that I want to be able to have a different kind of impact on the people that come in front of the court. So I'm used to sitting next to someone and having to explain to the judge that they are more than just a piece of paper that the judge may only have about them, whether it's a criminal complaint or a report from the Department of Corrections. I want the opportunity to look at what would be normally my client, but look that person in the face and say, what can you do? Not just the court system, because the court system is very limited. What
Mhm.
can you do to prevent to have to come in front of a judge and have a judge impact not only your life, but everyone else around your life or who else you may have impacted? I want that opportunity to engage somebody and use my experience of dealing with a lot of young people, dealing with a lot of people with severe mental health and drug issues, and to be able to say, this is the experience that I've had from that side of the room. If you don't change and make the effort to do that turnaround, the court system can only do so much. And it is more focused on the punishment and community safety aspect. They're not so focused on how can we prevent someone from coming back into the system. So that's where I think I have the experience and the personal knowledge, just because I've been doing it for so long, to hopefully be able to engage them. And I want to have that impact to prevent people from coming back to the court systems for all the wrong reasons.
Okay. I lost track of questions. Sorry, that one came off the cuff because I realized we don't have them in the list. Um, so what steps would you take? Well, and I think you've just kind of answered this a little bit, but I want a little bit more detail, and this is little bit of a twist. What steps can you take so that all individuals, regardless of their background or financial status, have equal access to justice in your courtroom?
So this has been a struggle before COVID. It just got so much worse during COVID. There is a lack of attorneys that are available to take cases in Racine County, but also other counties within our state.
Mhm.
And so we have people who are sitting in jail just waiting for attorneys to get onto their case. That doesn't help anybody. That doesn't help the community, doesn't help a victim to get their closure. It doesn't help even the inmate or the defendant from getting and just figuring out what's going to happen in their lives. And it actually costs a lot of money for taxpayers. So the thing that I am hoping that I can do is allow attorneys to appear by Zoom. We don't do that
Mhm.
very often here in Racine County, but that will open up the pool of attorneys that are outside of the just Racine County to come and be able to represent people. I think that will get more people attorneys, more cases wrapping up a lot faster, and just seeing movement, because that's what's happening right now. When I go into the jail, there's so many people asking, can you be my attorney? I've been waiting here forever for an attorney. And that does come down to finances, right? If you can get out and bond yourself out, you have a lot better chance of finding an attorney. You can hire someone on your own. When you're in custody, you're just kind of waiting for someone to do something for you. The other issue that I see is that um, there are a lot of programs, there's a lot of mental health AODA counseling that costs money.
Mhm.
And it is, as a defense attorney all the time, I encourage my clients to go get that treatment so that when I'm in front of a judge, I can say, hey, look, they've done the treatment that is necessary to hopefully get them on the right track. I don't think money should always be a barrier for that. And I, as a judge, I want to be able to factor in like, hey, this person who has a lot of money or they're insured, they're going to be able to go anywhere to get that treatment. But
Mhm.
someone that is already struggling and doesn't really know or doesn't have the money or avenues to do that, I don't want to punish them because they don't have that same opportunity to get themselves into some kind of treatment facility. So I'm very cognizant of the fact that there are benefits when you have money in this system.
So I just want to back up just a little bit. Can you define what AODA stands for?
Oh, sorry. A drug and alcohol assessment.
Okay.
There's, there's more like formal ways, but also in then the follow through as well. That can all cost money. And so if you're not insured or you're underinsured, that's usually not something that's covered. And obviously there's advantages if you can get those services in place before you meet a defense attorney or a judge.
So okay, so this is a fact-finding question for me too.
Mhm.
But if I'm a defendant in front of you and I don't have the money to pay for an attorney, so I get a public defender, whether they're in Racine, which also can we just I think people might not understand too that even if your attorney's not in Racine County, is if you're participating via Zoom, it almost doesn't matter where they live because if you're licensed by the state, like you can be in any county. You
Yep.
just have to know the laws of that county, like specific things, right?
Well, it's state law. So if you're in circuit court, it's really a
Mhm.
state law
Okay.
that's being applied.
Okay. So if I'm a defendant in front of you and I don't have the money for an attorney, I get a public defender and I need one of those intervention programs, but I can't afford it. How do I get it? Who pays for that then? And I think this more speaks to, or maybe it's a question of how are the courts funded in that
So
way?
the courts don't have really anything to do with someone going in and getting treatment.
Okay.
A judge, after someone is sentenced or is being sentenced, can order that as a term of their probation that they do some kind of treatment, where it's mental
Mhm.
health or some kind of drug or other substance treatment, but they don't
Okay.
really have an impact on where they go or how they get there, right? They can just
Okay.
order it during sentencing.
Mhm.
But what I guess I view it as the role of a judge is I don't want to um, give kudos to someone who can afford it, but then punish someone more harshly for someone who can't afford it.
Gotcha.
I appreciate that someone has the money to be able to do that treatment,
Mhm.
and I would definitely factor that in. But I
Okay.
just don't think I would say, well, that person who can't afford it, somehow we need to punish them harsher for not being in the same position. That's how I was kind of trying to explain it.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you. So how do you plan to manage your caseload effectively to make sure that people are getting timely and fair resolutions for all parties involved, really?
Yes. So I'm actually extremely proud of the way that I've always been able to manage my cases and manage getting through them. I am fully aware that attorneys are dealing with a higher volume of discovery than they've ever had in the past. Every police officer has body cam, and every house has a camera, and every street has a camera. So there is also a lot more for attorneys to have to go through on both
Mhm.
sides before they can be ready for a case and really
Okay.
understand the facts and circumstances of the case. But I don't expect things to linger in my courtroom for long. I do think that there needs to be a little bit of a push that everyone is reviewing things and they're communicating with their clients outside of court. I don't really want if I was a defendant, I wouldn't want to just see my attorney 5 seconds before I'm about to go in front of a judge.
Right.
I want to make sure that everyone is communicating long before they have to see me. And I
Mhm.
think that is the best way to keep cases moving along.
So I do think that I think there's a valid complaint that the wheels of the courtroom, and it doesn't matter if you're in front of a judge for a criminal or a civil case, they move so slowly. Like, what is I guess, can you help people who have not had to be in court for either of those instances? Like, wh- why? Why is there so much time between court dates? Like, if I have a court date on let's just say it's tomorrow, right? Like tomorrow. Sorry, my cat is about to jump on me. 1 second.
No,
Get out,
my cat
get
is
out,
right
get out.
under my feet.
Okay. Yeah, he's like meowing at me. He's got the angry meow. Um, but I do think that if I have a court date tomorrow and a question comes up where we need to get more information before we come back in front of you, like why is it 30, 60, 90 days out? Like that for criminal, I can imagine it's like that must be excruciating for people to wait. But even on civil matters, certain civil matters, the wait is it really makes you question about the efficiency and effectiveness of the courts.
Yep. I think, and this is something people can look up on CCAP. You can look up the judges' calendars by their name. If you
Hmm.
look at their calendars are full, whether it's
Yeah.
civil, family, juvenile, criminal. I guess you can't see juvenile on CCAP, but they're full. These aren't circumstances in which, everyone is just sitting in their office waiting for the next thing to happen. Judges are
Hmm.
usually in their courtroom from 8 a.m. until at least 4:30, sometimes later when it's trials, they can go into the night.
Hmm.
And the one thing I know about even my calendar, I will have an entire month where it's already full of trials. And it's very hard to explain to people that, people in custody get the priority. And when it comes to
Hmm.
trials, they usually are at the front of the list because they're in custody. So if I have
Yeah.
someone who's out of custody and they've only had a few statuses, their trial is going to be far, set out way past someone who's in custody. And that's the
Okay.
way it should be.
Hmm.
Same thing on civil court, their trials last just as long as some of the most serious trials here in
Sure.
Racine. And so I think people think that, oh, I'm the one person and now I'm getting a date 3 months out, but they're not
Okay.
thinking about 3 months ago, someone was experiencing the same thing. So it really is just full.
Understood. Okay. Thank you for explaining that because I do think that that is a question a lot of people have. Like, my matter's pretty simple. Why is it taking X number of months to get it resolved, right?
Yep.
So thank you for explaining that. All right. So how do you, well, I almost skipped a question. Sorry. I jumped to number 7, but we're only on number 6. Uh, yes. What measures will you implement to recognize and mitigate implicit biases in your courtroom to uphold impartiality?
I think, and I've been doing this long enough that sometimes I can tell, you know, and pay attention to the fact that there's very similar circumstances, very similar type of charges, and people are not being treated the same. I know that the Racine County I followed me on one case in particular that I was very upset with the way that my client was treated in comparison to somebody else. So I am not afraid to call a spade and say there's a problem here. Can someone please explain to me why this one person was given a misdemeanor or something that was able to be available for expungement when I have a very similarly situated individual over here, someone's asking for prison with no possibility for expungement.
Mhm.
And I am fully aware of it is not just about the one case that is in front of me, that there are a whole lot of dynamics behind a person that can lead to that consequence. So I do want that explanation from attorneys or parties as to why we're having and there may be a very legitimate reason for why that's okay as well. But I am fully aware of it and would definitely want to question why we're not treating people equally or fairly in a courtroom.
Okay. Um, how do you balance the need for public safety and offender accountability with opportunities for rehabilitations, particularly for nonviolent offenders?
So for nonviolent, and I guess we're kind of aiming more for maybe like possession of like THC and cases like
Yeah,
that.
like not, yeah, and it's not necessarily, I don't know why. I always make, and this is a false equivalency. I'm
Yeah,
just going to state that this is a false equivalency that I'm about to say. But I always think nonviolent offenders often mean victimless crimes, but that's not necessarily true.
yeah.
So, but we are, I don't know, I feel like the rhetoric that I'm seeing, especially maybe even on our Facebook page, is that people don't there's no they aren't applying any nuance or any type of like the factors you were talking about, like they're not applying any individual facts or factors that separate and differentiate one case from another. They just throw the book at them. Everybody just throw the book at them, right?
Yes.
So, so how do you balance that? Because public safety is a concern, and at the same time, people who break the law should be held accountable.
I I do think that public safety is the first and the priority, right? Because it usually, if it's public safety, that person who might have been responsible for that harm is
Mhm,
also harming themselves. So if you don't address that issue and the impact that that person might have, not only on the community,
mhm,
but themselves, then you kind of are failing as a system, right?
mhm.
So I also think that accountability is very important because I'm not a big believer that there's a victimless crimes. I think
Mhm.
that there are ones that are not violent or there's not physical harm, right? But I don't really, when I think of cases, especially even with drug possession cases, I have sat by parents too often who just wish that they would have their kid back, right? And
Oh, yeah.
they're harmed, right? They're
Mhm,
looking for a person that's not there anymore. And even though they're not physically harming anybody, they might be stealing or something like that. There is a victim impact there with their
mhm.
family. So I think that is a case to case basis. Unlike comments in a social media platform, I do think actually our court system is really good at looking at that individual, applying the circumstances that surround that individual, as well as previous experiences to apply a sentence that is fitting, that does all the things that a judge is required to do to try to protect the community, but also to take in the concerns of that defendant. So I have not really had that experience in our court system where I think that there's just a blanket sentence for a particular type of
Sure,
charge.
sure.
I do think it's very individualized.
Okay. Um, describe a situation where you had to make a really difficult decision under public scrutiny. Excuse me. How did you handle it, and what did you learn from it?
I am going to use the example where I really was boisterous about the treatment of one of my clients, that I didn't feel that he was being treated fairly in the
Mhm,
court system because of the color of his skin. And just to kind of do some of the background, my client was charged with another young man. Both of them were equally participants. They were charged with the very same thing. But the offer for my client was a higher offense, and the other one had the opportunity for expungement. He ended up getting the expungement and he got probation while my client got prison. I
mhm,
was very honest with everybody. I said, this isn't something where I think that he didn't do it. He's not even saying he didn't do it. We were just asking that they be treated fairly under the
and
circumstances.
equally, that the offers be the same.
Offers being the same. And then even if that could happen, I was kind of hoping that the court would recognize the fact that my client was very helpful with the police and very polite with the police, while the other kid was rude and kind of arrogant with the police. And he actually knew the victim personally. It was a personal issue for him. I was hoping that even if I couldn't get the same offer, that the court would be that equalizer, right? And I think that's always in the back of my head, is that I can't control what other people can do. I can only control what I have control over. And
Mhm,
that's how I kind of see myself as a judge, is that I don't want anyone walking away thinking that they weren't treated fairly. I can't say that everyone would be happy or really excited about my opinions, but I want at least that I was fair, right?
mhm,
And so I was just way more vocal. I haven't stopped talking about it. I dragged in the public. Had everyone on Zoom to watch it all go down. And I did talk about it with people because I wanted them to see it from beginning to the end. So
mhm.
I'm not afraid of, speaking out and doing what's hard and trying to do what's right for my clients and also for this community. I just really want to bring that attention that, not everyone is treated fairly in our court system. And I really want to be a judge that can be as fair as possible.
So, would you say that from that experience, you it it bolstered your uh goal, or goal's the wrong word, but it really bolstered like your belief that as a judge, sitting like it is you fairness is, I mean, the whole point, right, is that justice is a scale, right? That's why we have justice as an actual person holding a scale.
Mhm.
Justice is a scale. And ideally, scales are balanced, right? And so would you say that that experience made you even more determined to kind of to not just be fair, but maybe even examine your, like, be able to step back occasionally and question yourself about like be curious about why did I choose this decision, or why did, like whatever it is.
Well, that's funny. I was just talking to a friend about that today because I always do this weird self-check of have I become too comfortable? Am I settling and not fighting as hard as I used to, or am I not fighting as hard for this client and over another client? I am very aware of fatigue of the job, right? So
Mhm.
I do try to give myself that reminder, like you need to keep fighting for this client. If you're not, then are you okay? Do you need to take a step back and take less clients or less cases? Yes, that case I think made me more focused
Okay.
on what I would like to be as a judge, fully understanding that everyone has their different roles and even judges have their limitations, right? And
Mhm.
so that case will always be in the back of my mind of, am I treating everyone fairly? It's not a question, sometimes you can't give the same fine and the same punishment for the same charge. That's not what I'm saying, but
Mhm.
I want to be able to say that, hey, this kid had a very traumatic background. No family showed up for him when he came to court at 17 years old, while the other one had a full family support and did not have the trauma. There might be a reason for why they're both in the same circumstances. And how would I view that as being fair?
Okay. Thank you. Um, so how do you stay informed about legal developments to be sure that there is continuous improvement in what could be your judicial practices?
Well, I get notifications all the time. There are state bar. And I do. I try to stay up to date, not as much recently, but before running for office, stay up to date with the changing laws and changing or cases that even before they have decisions that are going through the system that will impact my practice. I would do the same thing as a judge. You have to, and it is part of keeping your license that you have to have continuing legal education so that you aren't falling behind and making sure that you're on top of the laws as they change. And it does feel like they're changing a lot faster and more
Mhm.
drastically than they've had in years past.
Okay. So this is our final question. I know this went really fast, but
I had to check the
um,
time.
I know it's like 3:02. Been talking for like exactly 30 minutes. What is your vision for Racine County Circuit Court over the next 6 years, and how do you see yourself contributing to that vision?
So they already have two treatment courts. They have Veterans Court, and they have Drug Court.
Hmm.
And I just have seen the positives of how those courts work,
Hmm.
in simple sense of recidivism, right?
Hmm.
There is something about having to appear in front of a judge and probation and attorneys on a more regular basis that when something goes wrong, and what I love about those treatment courts is that they're expecting, especially if it's a substance abuse issue, they're expecting someone to reuse, right?
Hmm.
But they can address that issue right away, as
Okay.
opposed to when someone's on supervision, maybe they've been using for an entire month. The agent only checks in with them once a month, and it's not
Hmm.
always a drug test. So they have to kind of wait until they're getting caught. And then usually by then things have gotten really bad. Something else has happened, right?
Hmm.
And so I don't know how the court system, it would be over flooded if we would try to do that with every type of charge and every type of case. But the fact that those two kind of courts are very successful at
Hmm.
keeping people from reoffending again is something we should figure out how we can apply to other cases, especially when it involves cases that are domestic, so any kind of violent cases. We just see too many times the same individual coming back with the same partner over and over again. And that's, I think, really what I want to try to figure out as a judge. How can we curb that cycle of domestic violence?
Hmm.
Because we know that it escalates, right? It's
Right.
something that only gets worse if that cycle isn't broken. So that is something I want to focus on, knowing that we have two treatment courts that are being looked at and examined and are very successful.
Okay. So it would be, so let's just use domestic violence
Mhm.
offenders as the example since you brought it up. So it would be a similar type of treatment court because not all domestic violence offenders are alcoholics or drug abusers, right? Like they're just not. Sometimes they suffer from their own trauma or whatever the deal is, right? So you're thinking of a treatment court that can help them, avoid the prison or whatever the sentence would be.
To be monitored by a team, right? That
Yeah.
includes a judge and includes probation, and it includes the DA's office and probably the public
Okay.
defender's office, just like they do with the other treatment courts.
Mhm.
The problem is that a lot of times what happens is we set this kind of case for a trial. We wait to see if the victim is going to participate. They usually don't. The case gets dismissed and there's nothing, right? The
Right.
person didn't go to jail. There's no
Mhm.
probation. We just wait a few months later and then something else happens. And so this is where I think we could change that by saying, hey, we want to see how it goes. We want to make sure that both individuals, if they have a child in common or they're planning on continuing having a relationship, that both individuals are going to seek treatment. And you're right, it's not always alcohol or mental health, or it's some form of mental health, right?
Right.
But we want to see some form of improvement over a period of time, as
Yeah.
opposed to, oh, you're free now. Good luck to you. We'll see you maybe in a few months, right?
Right.
I know that the DA's office is working on a diversion program in which they don't charge it and they're supposed to go through the programming. But I think that that is missing out on the opportunities of, again, immediate consequences for if it doesn't work. And there is something that is very different when you have to appear in front of a judge if you've messed up some way. So
Mhm.
I think the better route for a domestic violence case, and that's really where I want to be able to focus on. I think the better route is like our drug and veterans court as opposed to a diversion program.
Awesome. Well, everyone, so that was our last question. And so I want to give Jamie a last minute or two to explain why she should be able to earn your vote. So go ahead.
Thank you. Well, the early voting has already started in Racine. So if you haven't already voted for me, you can do that now. The election day is actually April 1st. I really do love Racine. I have brought my family here. I volunteer here all the time. I am quite proud that I have only represented people and not businesses or insurance companies. I represent the people of Racine County. I look forward to being a judge here and continuing to work in the community. I fully understand that people are struggling right now and they just want to be heard. I also want victims to know that they are protected and that I will take their cases and their word very seriously. And I don't want anyone in my courtroom to feel like they're being overlooked. So I know that we already went through a very difficult campaign season at the fall last year, but I need everyone to go out and vote this time again by April 1st. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jamie, for joining us. Everyone, whenever you're watching this, thank you for joining us. Again, early voting did start yesterday, so you can go visit your municipal clerk's office to cast your ballot. They will witness it or, and then save it for election night. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Tuesday, April 1st. If you have not registered to vote, you can register to vote on election day. We are not endorsing anybody. We just want people to exercise their right to vote on April 1st. So please, 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 please go hit the polls. And Jamie, thank you again for joining us. We are continuing our conversations, which we will continue airing live on YouTube and then posting the link on the Racine County Eye Facebook page. So thank you, everyone. Have a great morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you